It's floor time. So, okay, here's. I've actually been thinking a lot recently, and a lot of the time that I'm trying to communicate something, it's such like a scripted thing for a specific purpose, which is good because they're things I care about. I care about a lot. But I feel like I haven't allowed myself the opportunity to really try to like communicate without a purpose. And that's not necessarily the most compelling thing in isolation, but it's like, I think that maybe if we can talk and not, and just express things, but not worry about getting every word right, I think that there's some beauty to that. Or at least for me, there's like a little bit of like an urge for it sometimes. And so I want to just be here and communicate and talk about things because my brain has been racing, and I feel like I'm at this point in my life where things could, you know, I feel like I'm at like this like cutting point where it's like whatever happens, there's just my life can look a lot different in a lot of different ways, right? And so I want to be able to, as I'm going through things and experiences, be able to like document how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking about at specific times. So really, this is more for me, but at the same time, I don't just want to bottle everything up in my own head. Um, so if you want to listen to this random person sitting on the floor in their room right behind a Survivor bandana thing. It's not a buff. I wish I had a buff. I wish I had my own buff. Any CBS casting producers. My mom thinks I would be really good on Survivor. And my gosh, every like fiber of my like existence is like, I love Survivor so much. I adore it. I started watching when I just moved back to America when I was 8. That was Nicaragua, which like generally not considered a great season, but I loved it because it was like that was my introduction to Survivor, and I did get hooked. And watching the next season, seeing Boston Rob win, and like Survivor has always been like, something I'm really engaged with. But I think, and as a kid, like I wanted to go on Survivor because that was the fun TV show. The people that I was looking up to, they were on Survivor, and like the the reason that I think I've wanted to be on Survivor, and I started applying from the moment I turned 18. I was recording like audition tape clips every single year leading up to 18. I was really excited about this, and I still am. Um, it was, I don't know, it's just like the reason I wanted to be on that has changed a lot. From like as a kid, I wanted to do it because the people that I looked up to were doing it. I was the novelty of, oh, I want to be on TV, whatever. And that's like totally not the case anymore. Like, I like the idea of entertaining people, right? That's what I do. I'm a writer, I'm a professor, and even though, entertainment is not the goal of being a professor, I do want to, in some ways, engage and entertain my students. So it's like, that's like, it's part of what I do is like, I want to be able to put on this fun thing for people to engage with and to find a connection point from people in different backgrounds and different experiences. Like, there's a million different ways that people can like react to a certain thing happening, or a certain sort of experience, even if there's like a relation point. Like, we say somebody loses a friend, like there's a million different ways people might react to that. And like, what I've been trying to do in my work is like think, okay, what is an underlying like emotion that can be poignant, that can like hit to all those different experiences. Like, how can we create this conversation point from across those experiences? And I think like that's almost, to me, what a lot of Survivor is too, because like a bunch of people from a bunch of different backgrounds, trying to like get together and work together and win as a tribe, and then you'll find ways to get forward, which means working with people. And so it's like somehow a lot of what I'm doing is like a lot of this like connection point I see on TV. And so for a while before I started getting into this, I was like, I want to be on Survivor because I want to prove something to myself. I want to figure out who I am. And somehow I got in my head that doing something like Survivor was the way to do that, which was in itself, maybe a little bit silly. Because there's opportunities. People learn who they are without going onto a reality TV show. So I had a moment, like I put in another audition tape a few years later that I'm like, I used to want to go on Survivor because I wanted to prove something to myself, but now I want to go on to Survivor because I've already proven things to myself, and now I want to like act on it. But now it's like motivations, change, and now it's like I want to, entertain people, but I also don't just want to like sit back and do nothing. Like, I'm a bad passive participant. I'm such a bad passive participant. It's been like, I was thinking about this recently because I put in a Survivor audition where I'm like, I'm a bad passive participant, and that's like, it's so true, and it is like indicative of me, and why that is something I've been thinking about a lot. But I thought about this one time where I was in, I think it was Spain, it might have been France, it was one of the two, and there were some like kids playing soccer, and I was with, a couple of friends, and we're just like, I don't like soccer at all, but we're like, why don't we go just play soccer with them? And we did, and I was a goalie. I was maybe a good goalie, I don't know. I got mixed reports on that, but I had the time of my life playing a game that I didn't like with people that I didn't know in a country I wasn't from, who spoke a language that I didn't speak. And so it was Spain. I do know French. And so there was a lot of, excitement around that. And it's something I've been thinking a lot about recently too, is this like being a bad passive participant and like extending from that. I think the things that like get me really excited are the things that are inherently uncomfortable. I've been wanting to get into improv lately, and I think I'm gonna try to when I have the opportunity. And I've just been like thinking, a lot of people's worst nightmare is probably going up in front of an audience in a theater and having no idea what to say. But to me, that's like thrilling, all of like the pressure on you, and it's just, you gotta figure it out, and I don't know, I think that's true of a lot of things. It's just, you have to be able to adapt and figure it out, and that's what a lot of this like last little bit of my life has felt like. So it's this thing, it's like this big nightmare, for a lot of people, is being in front of an audience and having no idea what the next line you're going to say is. But I'm like, that sounds amazing, right? And that's not just isolated in like an improv scenario, but that sort of like excitement applies to a lot of things, Going back, Survivor is uncomfortable, and you're hungry, and I know when I get hungry, I'm very unhappy. And, I'm fortunate enough, I have like food security, but like, I like those things. I like having some comfort. I like breaking that comfort. I love breaking that comfort. I'm scared of never breaking that comfort, but like, when I'm in comfort, I enjoy the things that are comfortable. And when I'm not in comfort, there are things that are uncomfortable that create their own sort of satisfaction. But it's like, being in that environment is like a dream to me. It's like a little bit of fear that like oh man, what if you hype this up? Like, I wanted to be a Survivor 10 years ago when I was like way too young to even be on this show, and I'm like, it would be awful to be the first one out, but to have that pressure on you that like, oh man, you might just totally mess up. It's like, it's liberating. Something I've been writing in my novel recently is sort of about that we have to come to terms with this acceptance and willingness to totally fail, which is also why I like doing something like this. I don't have a script, this could be incoherent nonsense, and that's awesome, right? Like, if we open ourselves up to fail, I think that there's a lot of beauty and like a lot of opportunity to discover new ideas and start to think through things. Like, it opens you up. If you are concerned with being right all the time, you might never have an interesting idea because you're trying to make sure that idea fully works before you really start to explore it conceptually. But like, if you go into something and you're like, you accept that you're gonna have an idea that is terrible, that is just the worst idea possible, like, it's freeing, because then you're like, well, let's figure this out. And sometimes you hit gold, a lot of times you're gonna fail, but at least it's gonna be interesting, right? Like, I'm gonna go back to Survivor again. It's been on my head. I've been watching like 24/7, like, not 24/7. I sleep for 8 hours. I sleep for 6 hours. But like 18/7, I'm watching Survivor. When I'm working, I'm sitting there watching Survivor. But anyway, so like, to tie that back, like, I think that the thing that's scarier than like doing bad on something that you hype up is like, or like going out early in something that you've been hyping up. But like, I think that what's scarier is going out and just doing a bad job representing yourself and being so concerned with making it as far as you can that you stop trying to like make the most of the opportunity. Like, I think the thing that's scarier than adventure is disappointing myself and like not living up to the sort of person I want to be, or being too scared to take chances that like I catch myself into like a narrow path that's like suffocating. And so I keep talking about Survivor. What's suffocating is the idea of like never trying something that crazy. And like, if I never make it on the show, I never make it on the show, and that's okay. I don't need that to be fulfilled. But it's like, I want to take shots, and like, it's fun to like apply and do those things. Like, it's fun to hype up the idea of it. And it'd be fun to execute on that too. But regardless, if any CBS casting producers, Jesse, if you're watching, again, my mom thinks I would be really good on Survivor, and I think we have to take her word for it. But anyway, no. So I've been like thinking a lot about what that means to like be willing to fail, because that also brings in the opportunity to like be interesting and discover new things. And like, that's not just like discovering new ideas, that might also be discovering things about yourself and like growing from it. Is, if I open myself up to try something and fail, what can I learn from that? And we can grow, and we can, I think, like, being like hyperbolic, sure, and I'm like being maybe a little bit egotistical, and like, I might be the narcissistic writer that like is really hyping up the importance of writing and narrative, and I might be pedagogically hyping myself up, and frankly that's probably a heinous use of the word, but like I really think that like it is through making that effort that we can really like become better people. And it also has been something I've been thinking a lot about. There's a couple of things. One is, I'm gonna bring in the first one, but like one is like, what does it actually mean to grow? And how do we separate growth and change? Because I think we use the word interchangeably. I've even said it before. It's like we change, we grow. That's part of life. And I think that we all hear that sort of message and it sort of connects the two. But like when a tree grows leaves, it doesn't stop being a tree. When grass grows, it doesn't stop being grass. But change implies a complete transformation, which also I think implies like this rejection of prior self to become something new rather than becoming more of yourself or expanding on who you are. It's like there is a big difference there, and however we're using words, I think that like it can lead to some confusion, and maybe it's just me, but I've been thinking about it a lot, and it's like when we say we change and we grow, what do we mean? Does bettering yourself mean rejecting yourself? Like, I don't know. There are times that like I think I'm a better person now than I used to be. I think I'm probably a much better person now. But does that mean that I have at some point failed to be myself and now I am myself? Is it some like sort of unmasking process there where I've taken off this face and now I am more myself? Or did this definition of myself, did that change? You know, am I a different individual? And I know I'm not, because I'm the same person who lived those experiences. But like, what is it about trying to better ourselves? Like, what are we actually doing? And how can we grow without changing who we are? And I think as we figure out who we are, I think that there's some intuition that it's like, this feels right. And like, I'm gay, so it's like there's some degree of that like, what degree of myself feeling like tangibly correct is tied to like that sort of experience of like figuring out who I am. Like, part of this is like coming out of the closet and like being super relieving. Part of it's unmasking and like realizing once you sort of unmask and no longer feel the need to try to like conform to a status quo, like I lost my train of thought there, but it's like maybe that's what's confusing me about the difference between growth and change, because I do feel like I've changed and I've grown too, but I feel like they are different things. And again, maybe I can tie that to like a moment of like coming out of the closet, or like there are experiences that we learn from, and by learning we grow in the literal extent that our knowledge has grown, our way of thinking has grown. But I don't know, I don't know. Like, what should the goal be? Because when we talk about change, I feel like the other thing that we imply is a sort of standard that we're grading on. What we also have is a status quo. And I think that it's a natural instinct of people, especially young people, to want to fit in. If I were to wager a guess, that's probably a relatively universal instinct as people, is to try to assess what a group is like and then assess what it takes to fit in. And it's easier for some people than it is for others. Sometimes just by chance, sometimes by like actual medical diagnoses. You know, if you have autism or ADHD or OCD, like those are things that change. And I learned recently that I have ADHD and OCD, and that's interesting to me, because I think that in retrospect, I can probably see how I concealed those behaviors and like that those trains of thought, because that wasn't the status quo. That wasn't what we saw around us. We're like, okay, let's try to fit in. And it's not even that you're recognizing that you're different. There's some degree that, like, for all I knew, the things that I have been thinking, other kids were thinking too. There was no reason. There wasn't like some part of like, oh, I can tell I'm different, but I need to blend in because it's going to be easier for me. No, it's just I thought there was this way of being, and maybe these other kids were working really hard to fit into that way of being too. There's not really a way of knowing, and I think maybe that's probably still true, that there's a lot of people who are oblivious to the fact that they might be neurodivergent. The same way that there are probably people that are oblivious to the fact that they're gay. And I don't use oblivious as like a negative term here. It's just there are probably more people who have neurodiversities that just aren't aware of it because they've gotten so good at fitting in. And it's one of those things that, like, what I've noticed in my experiences, as I discover those things, it's way harder to pack it back in. Like that's when I say, like, it's unmasking. Like, once you take off that, like, mask, and once you start to become more aware of yourself, it's so hard to just go back to fitting in. And not even just from a, like, you know, a moral standpoint, not just from like an artistic standpoint of like trying to believe in yourself and be yourself. You know, we hear that a lot too, of be yourself, but then we hear change and grow. It's weird, it's confusing. So it's like, I'm not even like saying that it's hard to put the mask back on because we believe that being yourself is good. It's literally just from a just tangible, hands-on standpoint, it's really, really hard. It's just really hard. And there's not really a good reason to do it anyway. But it's just one of those things that, like, once you become aware of it, you really can't stop being aware of it. And that's interesting. It's been interesting to learn, and I'll go a step further here, that I've had not just like friends, but people just randomly who will come up to me and in some capacity tell me that I'm neurodivergent. This was before I was even diagnosed. like it happened with friends, but it would happen like I was a high ropes course monitor for a little bit. There was a group that came in, and um, they said, like, me and the manager, assistant manager, were communicating for a second. And this one group that was in front of us who had just gotten there was like, I love how neurodivergent people talk to each other. And immediately, million thoughts, right? Are you insulting me? Is this some sort of bigotry? Or are you also neurodivergent? Are you talking to us? There's just like, there's a lot of questions. I'm trying to assess if that was a friendly remark or not a friendly remark. And then they said, we're neurodivergent too. So we're just like, we notice it, and like, we genuinely do like love it. Like, there's such a unique and specific way that us neurodivergent people communicate. And I was just like, so are you calling me neurodivergent? And they're like, yeah, we can tell. These are people I've never met. And they were spot on right, And so then there's this little bit of like, once you become conscious of behaviors, it's hard to roll them back in, nor is there a desire to roll them back in. But there's also like a degree of, were those behaviors actually visible before? Was I oblivious to that? I must have been. And I'm starting to like, when enough people say it, you have to go, I wonder if I might be this way, because like one or two people, whatever, but then like you get like 10, 20 people who don't know saying something, like, it's like somebody says your hair looks funny and you don't know them, you're like, whatever, they're just being silly. And two people say it, they're like, I don't know, maybe my hair is actually funny. When 20 people tell you your hair is funny, you're gonna think my hair is probably funny. And it's the same thing with anything, right? And so I've been learning a lot about myself, and in that way I've been growing. And I feel like, and it's a unique feeling that like I feel very specifically that I am at a point where I do have a pretty strong degree of self-awareness, and I have a pretty strong conviction that I am myself. I don't feel like I need to be a different person. Like, I feel pretty good that how I generally present myself is an accurate reflection of who I am. And then there's a further question of like, when we say who I am, like, that's not a well-defined thing. It's like, but I feel like I understand myself better than I ever did before, and that's exciting. And so, however life plays out, it's like, I can take that, I can take that I'm doing it as myself, and it's silly, it's contrived, but it is like an earnest feeling that I have. The other thing I'm grateful for with that is I grew up with a special needs brother, and I wish that everybody could, because it's one of those things that, like, take everything away, that brother is just unusually kind, unusually enthusiastic, unusually loving, unusually intentional. Just like, he is just awesome, he's great. And so, like, everything else aside, I just had a wonderful brother. I have two good brothers, but just talking about the one right now. But like, that's the thing of like, it also gave me this understanding of difference, and like what that really means, because I think we forget that, right? Like, I think we forget that there isn't really an intuitive understanding of difference, especially with like disability with a kid, you know? It's like a kid is only going to be able to process the world, even adults, everybody, we can only really process the world from the way that we experience it. And as kids, we're not going to really be able to understand that that's not the only way it's experienced. And so I think that for a lot of people, they met somebody like my brother, you know, they might not intuitively understand the sort of way that he's going through the world because you can't rationalize it with your own. At a young age, I think people can probably start to figure it out as adults as we become more socially conscious. I got that as like a kid, that it's like, yeah, you know, you might be different, you know, there's not just like one way that the world is perceived or navigated. And like, how can you trade that experience? That's not an experience you can trade. Especially with somebody that's just that joyful, that like enthusiastic, that loving, everything I said earlier. Like, man, I'm a writer, I work really hard to try to find words that articulate real meaning and importance. I spent hours at my desk doing that. My brother doesn't need any. He doesn't need any words. He just understanding the good nature of people and the good nature of the world broadly is not something he struggles to try to articulate. And I sit at my desk every day working so hard to try to articulate it. That's the thing too, is I started taking walks recently. Just no earbuds, nothing, just walks, no distraction. And like, the writer in me, as I'm walking around, I'm like, every car driving by is like a story of something happening in a day. Everything I'm passing, every person I'm passing, there's a story of a day. And like, there's this unique intersection where 100 different stories, see 100 different cars, 100 different stories, all were there. The stories of their days were all at this intersection together within a 10-minute span. And like, it's interesting to me of like, just appreciating there is a lot to enjoy. And I think we look at how truly bad some things are. And I think that, and it's reasonable to think that like, from those bad things, the world is bad. But I've started to think that it's more so like, the world is good, and yet there are so many people who are stripped of an opportunity to enjoy that good. And from that, the onus is on all of us to just try to make the world a little better for people, and even in just small ways. Like, I said it in another video, but like, people never agree, everyone in the world, on the meaning of life or the purpose of life. But we can all agree that life is purposeful and meaningful in some capacity. In some capacity, what's happening in the world matters. It has some weight. Something. In some way, what's happening right now has some sort of meaning to it. And what I think is incredibly important, whatever beliefs you might have, is just like, let's just try to make it a little better for somebody else, right? Like, that's not like you don't have to work hard for that. You can, and you can do great things. But like, just trying to be kind to people, because like, it's so easy to make sweeping generalizations and label and like categorize, but like, when you get down to like a people nature, we can do better to like make it a little bit more comfortable, or even just being a nice person, and just being kind to somebody. Nice and kind, different things, but like, if we can be nice, that's one thing. If we can be kind, that's amazing. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I'm neurodivergent and I'm gay, and like, so there's already a lot of things like about me that like become contentious in some way. But it's like, let's just enjoy the world. Like, it is hard, and like, I'm not gonna be like, it's not that hard to be like super poetic about it. It is hard. It takes work and it takes effort to make things better. And sometimes I feel bad. I'm just sitting at my computer writing stories. Like, there's more that can be done, you know, and like, yeah, there is more that can be done, and I don't think that we can rightfully just like sit around and hope things get better, you know? But like, I don't know, that's why I just like, if ideology supersedes empathy, what's the point? Like, what's the point? I don't know. I'm not trying to be poetic about it. I'm not trying. This is for me, you know? I'm being selfish right now by talking to this camera and just expressing myself. And like, I could be totally wrong, you know? I'm not the one that should speak to the experience of specific people that are at specific disadvantages for very specific reasons because of very specific bigotry, you know? Like, I can't speak for people in that way. But I can speak for me. And me, I want to just make the world a little bit more comfortable, and I don't know. I wish there was a clear path to doing that on a broad scale. And I recognize that doing it on a small scale might not actually do much, but you know, I'm not trying to be like bold and egotistical about it. This is just like baseline. I think it's a universal thing. Like, I wish it was. That like, just being good to people. I don't know. But I feel really fortunate. I feel really fortunate to have been able to grow and change in the specific ways I have, and I'm appreciative that even with the few things that make it harder, I can enjoy the world. Sometimes I'll be, called a slur. It's happened. But I can enjoy the world to some degree. I can try at least. I can try to make the world better for people. It's not even. No, that's not true. Well, I think I want to correct myself that it's not about making the world better for people. Because I think at some point we need to stop trying to make the world better and start trying to allow people to enjoy the world for the good that it is. Because that's the problem, right? The world's great for some people. It could be better for some people. But I want to just... Maybe I can at least make a moment better? A specific interaction better? Maybe I can make a day better. Maybe I can, help make somebody feel good about themselves. And, that doesn't circumvent the need for broader collective action. But, I don't know, at least it's something that I can do. And I feel, again, I go back to, I feel grateful, I've had a lot of really cool opportunity, and like I said, I'm recording this now when there's a lot of different ways life can go, and I'm in a good spot. And I'm doing things that I care about. I have friends that I care about. I'm happy with who I am. And even if I was in a wheelchair for 9 months, even if I did live in a nursing home for a month at 22 years old, I feel pretty lucky for where I am at 23. I feel like I've been put in a uniquely fortunate situation in that way, and it's really cool. And I take a lot of pride in the things I do, and it's been so exciting the last year. I've become such a better writer, and it gets me excited about the things that I'm doing more, gives me more opportunity to hit on feelings that feel important. So yeah, I'm just grateful, and I'm grateful that for 44 minutes, oh gosh, I can sit here on the floor and just talk about it. Now, I know it's a different experience watching this, and I don't know if I really anticipate people will. Don't care if you do or not, if you do, and you want to chat, I'm open to chatting, but it's this is just for me, and been a lot of things in my mind. My brain has just been racing some nights. Some nights I can't sleep because I can't sleep. Some nights I can't sleep because a million thoughts an hour. And sometimes I want them to shut up and just go to sleep. But sometimes I kind of like letting my mind race, because, like, there's so much to do in a given day. How often do we actually have the chance to let our mind race through ideas? So I don't hate it when it happens. So it drags on so far. But I don't know. It's nice to talk about it. It's just nice to talk about it. So whether anyone's listening or not, thank you. And if you're a CBS producer listening to this, again, my mom